I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. I would make an announcement that we do have additional seating behind us here. Okay. Mr. Caldwell, the first item, please. Oh, wait, you have public comment first.
No, let's establish quorum first. Let's do roll call.
Oh, yeah, we need a roll call. I'm sorry.
All right. Okay, starting with the chair. Walter Miller.
Here.
Vice Chair Ricardo Samaniego. Mayor Antonio Araujo. Senator Cesar Blanco. Councilman Rudy Cruz. Senator Joseph Cervantes. Alderman Dino Coronado. Trent Doolittle. Representative Art Fierro. Representative Mary Gonzalez. City Manager Tommy Gonzalez. Representative Cassandra Hernandez.
Present.
Thank you. Yvette Hernandez.
Present.
Commissioner Ilan Holguin. Mayor Oscar Leeser.
Here.
Mayor Manuel Leos. Representative Cici Lizárraga. Representative Willie Madrid.
Here.
Representative Joe Moody. Present. Representative Claudia Ordaz Perez. Representative Lynn Ortega.
Here.
Norma Palacios.
Here.
Mayor Javier Perea. Representative Henry Rivera. Sam Rodriguez.
Here.
Mayor Benjamin Romero. Commissioner Manuel Sanchez. Ellen Smythe.
Here.
Tomas Treviño.
Here.
And Mayor Diana Murillo. So we do have one.
Thank you. I would ask that if all the members would please turn your name tags towards me so that. Yeah, I need yours. Thank you very much. Okay, we can go to the first item of public comment.
All right, Mr. Chair, we have a lot of people that signed up for public comment. Most of these comments are for either items, I think most of them are item 13, but if there's anybody that wishes to make a comment that is not related to item 13 or 14, if we can call them in at this point.
Is there anyone in the audience who would do something other than items 13 and 14? Hearing none, I believe we can go on to item number 1.
All right, so we're moving to the discussion and action items. Item 1 is minutes of the February 18, 2022 EPMPO TPB meeting.
Do I have a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 2 is to designate Eduardo Calvo as the authorized representative for the El Paso MPO for the purpose of executing the Federal Transit Administration's fiscal year 2022 certifications and assurances.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. Is there discussion? This is just sort of a formality that we need to do every year.
Yes, we do it every year.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 3 is the March 2022 Project Readiness Report. This typically is presented by the TPAC chair, who is told us that will not be here. Vice Chair, okay. So the Vice Chair will be presenting this.
Good morning, Board. Maya Sanchez, Vice Chair of the TPAC. our chair, Jose Landeros, sends his regrets that he's not here today. It's pretty straightforward. There are 2 items that did have a high alert. However, I have been told, and correct me if I'm wrong, that one has been moved to medium and the other one is getting addressed. So there's nothing that is really of high alert and of concern at this time. Besides that, I will entertain any questions from the board.
Any questions from the board? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I would entertain a motion to accept the readiness report.
So be.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
All right, moving to item 4, Mr. Chair, items 4 and 5 are connected. They're pretty much the same thing. Both of them are to extend the existing agreements that we have with TTI and UTEP. So, but we're going to take them separately. So item 4 is Texas A&M Transportation Institute TTI Interlocal Cooperation Agreement Extension.
This is a service we use every year. It's a great partnership that we have. This is an ongoing thing. I would ask for a motion to approve.
So be.
A second. We have a motion and a second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Right. Item 5, University of Texas at El Paso UTEP Interlocal Cooperation Agreement Extension. Same thing.
The same thing. It's a great partnership that we have every year. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition, the motion carries.
All right, so moving on to item 6, A and B. The reason why we needed to extend the 2 agreements was so that we could accommodate these individual task orders with TTI and UTEP. Both of them are related to the Rider 7 program that we presented to you a few months ago. It's a really exciting thing. It's really cool that we got an extension from the original grant that we received for 200 and I think it was $280-some thousand. The extension is about $587,000. So with the task orders with TTI and UTEP, we will be performing some really interesting work that's related to air quality emissions. And the TTI and UTEP work is going to be focused on ports of entry so that we can get a better grasp in developing, the tools to measure emissions at the ports of entry. We have a very brief presentation that Harrison Ford, who's obviously not here, he'll be given to you all. So, okay. Harrison, if you're there.
Sorry. Setting things up. Chair, board members.
Cannot hear.
Hold on, Harrison. The volume is very low. Gabby, can we increase the volume?
Can't hear the.
Test. Don't make me shout.
Yes. Go ahead, Harrison.
Well, and actually, I think it would be better if I'm sharing the presentation right now, but I think it would be better if we switch back and Tim shared. So I'm going to unshare here.
Okay. Gabby, can we get the presentation back here? There we go.
Okay.
Great. So good morning, Chair, members of the board, Harrison Ford, Assistant Director with EPMPO. This presentation is a summary of proposed projects that, if approved, will use just under $482,000 Rider 7 grant funding. Rider 7 is a funding source that is dedicated to work on inventorying ozone within the region. The board approved an extension of the MPO's contract with TCEQ to add this funding at the November board meeting. And of course, you just approved the contract extensions with a couple of the entities that we'll be working with on these projects. We've been working with these entities to develop these projects, and the scopes for two of the three elements here are attached to the agenda and in your packet is item 6A and 6B. The next slide, please. And this is actually an old presentation. So okay, I actually will share. Sorry about that. Right, so the first project we are calling the International Border Crossing Emissions project, and this project has two phases. In the first phase, ATI, Texas A&M Transportation Institute, will assist the MPO in development of an emissions model, traffic activity at all El Paso region international border crossings, and ultimately the production of a border crossing emissions estimation tool that we'll be able to use in the Transmodeler software. Since this tool is going to be specifically calibrated to estimate emissions just for border crossings, just at the crossings themselves, the estimates are expected to be much more reliable, accurate. It's just going to be a better methodology for us to use in estimating emissions at the border crossings. The second phase of this project involves UTEP. They'll be assisting the MPO in gathering trip data for all travel modes at border crossings, including origin destination information, traffic counts at various times of day. That data will be used to identify usage statistics for each crossing, such as average crossing time by travel mode, peak travel hours in each direction. The MPO can then run a variety of scenarios to project what types of border crossing improvements would be most beneficial for emission reduction purposes. And that could be anything from adding lanes for certain types of traffic, adding capacity for non-vehicular crossings, certain entry points, or even estimating the benefits of new border crossings at various locations. The final project is an expansion on the urban densification scenario planning that MPO staff has already done some preliminary work on. And the summary description of that work is in the draft RMS 2050 MTP in Chapter 4. In that preliminary work, we modeled a hypothetical development scenario in which all of the projected population growth through 2050 is concentrated along major roadways across the region. And that improved transit service would be implemented along those corridors to help meet the travel demand. So in this map, you can see all of the projected population growth out to 2050 would fall somewhere in the yellow or green areas. And again, hypothetical scenario, that's not likely to happen. And what's more, as we did this, you'll see that this is all within the city of El Paso for the most part. A scenario like this can and should be expanded to include the entire region. So if this actually happened, if all of the population growth in these yellow and green areas, in the yellow areas, you would see population density increase by 2 to 3 times. And this image is an example of what that might look like on the ground. It's not a dramatic difference in terms of built environment, really, when you look at this as a representative example. This map shows the results of the Delphi process that the MPO went through to determine where population growth is likely to occur. And so you can see the darker red and blue dots are all along the edges. The densification scenario we did pulls all of those in along those major corridors. And the point of doing this was to examine, analyze how it would affect the transportation network in terms of congestion and also emissions. And so the maps on the top here compare the actual no-build scenario with the population growth happening along the edges as we expect it to happen. And on the right is a difference if that growth was happening along those corridors. And see some differences, but it's not a dramatic change. And in fact, if you look out on the eastern edge there, of course, if the growth is happening in areas that are already developed along existing corridors, then you don't have the congestion problems way out east. Well, most relevant to this Rider 7 project is the emissions estimation and that chart down at the bottom. And our initial look into this type of scenario showed that a denser development, if we were accommodating growth by building up rather than building out, we expect that we would have lower emissions. So that's a summary of all the work that MPO staff has already done. This project, again, is kind of an expansion on that. And so using the Rider 7 fund, MPO staff would work with a software called Urban Sim that uses both transportation network data and land use data to produce estimates for emissions, traffic, etc. The densification scenario that we already conducted is just an example of the type of development scenarios that we can test using this tool. And so that's really the goal of the project, to examine various ways that we could plan for growth in the region, how that will, how those different scenarios affect our emissions. So here is a timeline for each of these projects. The border crossing emissions tool being developed by TTI, which is phase 1 of that project. That is scheduled for completion by the end of February 2023. And simultaneously, UTEP will be doing the data gathering at the border crossings throughout the rest of this year. And the MPO and UTEP will do the coding and run alternative border crossing improvement scenarios through the end of August 2023. That last project, intensification scenario planning, It is scheduled to run through the end of October 2023. That's the longest timeline. And that's because the urban sim software is totally new to us. It's going to take a lot of time to set that up. And a lot of research, what kinds of scenarios we want to run, it makes, what it makes most sense for us to run. So as I said, 6A and 6B on the agenda cover 2 of the 3 things on this timeline. They are the IBC emissions phase 1 and phase 2 scopes and the actual task order documents. So MPO staff is recommending that the board authorize the executive director to sign both of those task orders so that we can get started on these projects as soon as possible. The final project, the urban densification policy project, is not on the agenda right now because we are still working with that consultant to finalize some paperwork and the contract language. But we plan to bring that to you for authorization to proceed at the April agenda. There are a lot more details that we could go into on all of these projects, but I wanted to keep it brief. And also, Dr. Salvador Ayala is really the one who should speak to those, and he's not available for this meeting. So, so this was just a quick overview of the projects. And that's all for my presentation. If you have any questions, please ask.
I have a question from,
So is the deliverable draft policy, densification policy, is the deliverable the tool, the model tool, or is the deliverable, what is the deliverable at the end of the day? What are we getting?
For the.
The deliverable is a report using development land use scenarios. So it's both creating the tool or creating the model to use in the tool and running scenario planning analyses to determine emission. It's going to be more than emissions, though, that we're going to get out of this. We'll get estimations for ozone and all of the emissions metrics that we follow, but I think it's going to be valuable beyond just emissions.
So Ellen, to answer your question, we are getting mostly the tools, right? And we're going to start using the tools. In the case of Urban Sim, I think this is one of the most exciting things that we have because of, like Harrison was explaining, a lot of the issues that we're having right now, and especially now that we're beginning to, really address more seriousness, more awareness on climate change and all that. Land use policies are, a lot of it's one of the most important elements that are affecting the way that we, the way that we move, right? So it's transportation and land use policies are not necessarily in sync. They've never been. Decisions are made by different mechanisms, different decision makers. And what we're trying to do here is using these land use models to bring them together to have a better understanding of what is the impact of changing our patterns, right? Is it going to be easy? Of course not. It's going to be very difficult to do that. There's so many different players involved from the public and private sector. Market forces dictate a lot of what is built and, what the people are buying in terms of households. So it's going to be difficult, but I think one of the first steps and what the MPO can really do is bring these models and start developing different scenarios and see what and measure the real impact on emissions. Right. So the Rider 7 is giving us that opportunity to do that, but to me the most valuable thing is having the tools so that we can develop alternative scenarios.
further question. Through our legal can take both of these together, can we not?
I prefer that you take them separately.
May I have a motion on, if there's no further questions, may I have a motion on item 6A?
So be.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item 6A passes. Item 6B.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those motions do carry.
Thank you. All right, moving to item 7, amendments to the federal fiscal year 2023-2020, fiscal years 2022-2023 Unified Planning Work Program, UPWP. Harrison, are you going to take care of that? Do we have the presentation?
Yes,
Go ahead.
I've got it here.
Okay.
Okay, so this is another quick overview of proposed amendments to the MPO's current Unified Planning Work Program. The Policy Board initially adopted the 2022-23 UPWP at the June 2021 board meeting, and staff subsequently submitted that to FHWA for review and approval. These proposed amendments include some edits that will address comments that we received from FHWA during their review. And we are also taking this opportunity to add additional projects into the document that have come together since last June. So the edits made in response to FHWA comments are pretty simple. We added estimated delivery dates for all of the expected work product from every UPWP subtask. And we added a matrix, which I know you can't read this, but it's in the backup. It's the last page of the UPWP. But this is a matrix relating UPWP subtasks to Federal FAST Act planning factors. And again, these are things that FHWA specifically said. You need to add these to the document. The other edits are to add 3 new subtasks under Task 5. Task 5 is for special projects. So subtask 5.3 is a project that the board approved at the January meeting. The task order has been signed with TTI. And that's assessment of direct economic cost of delay at Texas-Mexico commercial ports of entry. And that's going to, well, it's underway, but just initiating now. But that's a project that will estimate the cost of delay at the commercial ports of entry, using a tool that TTI has already developed. The other 2 subtasks that have been added are to include the projects that I just talked about in the previous presentation. So 5.4 covers the IBC emissions phase 1 and phase 2, and subtask 5.5 covers the urban densification policies project with Urban Sim. So again, staff does recommend approval of these amendments, and once we do have a newly approved version, then we'll be forwarding back to FHWA for them to review our responses to their comments and hopefully approval. That concludes my presentation.
Anybody have any questions for Harrison? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve this item?
So move.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition? The motion carries.
All right, items 8, 9, 10, and 11 are for letters of support that different entities have requested here. I think all the letters are in your backup material, but Mr. Chair, in the interest of time, I don't know if we can take them all together or if, we can discuss them separately. We also have presentations here for each one if you all are interested in knowing what these projects are for.
Okay, as you said, these are letters of support. What is the, I'm sorry,
Mr. Chair, I'll be abstaining from items 8 through 11.
so noted for the record.
If you don't like it.
What is the temperature of the board? Do we want to hear the presentations? There are some folks here, or shall we take items 8, 9, 10, and 11 together as one item for approval?
Together.
Together? Okay. Do I have a motion in support of the resolutions for items 8, 9, 10, and 11?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Caldwell is looking at me.
Question for Secretary, do I need to read them into the record?
The letters, no. They're put in the backup, that's fine.
The items, do we need to read them?
Oh, the items, yes.
Yes, please read the items into the record.
Okay, all right, so item 8 is a resolution of support for Town of Horizon City 2022 raised grant application for transit-oriented development planning funds. Item 9 is letter of support for City of El Paso 2022 raised grant application for Isleta Port of Entry pedestrian improvements. Item number 10, letter of support for TTI planning study to improve land border crossing transit and pedestrian connectivity to business districts in the El Paso region for equity, accessibility, and economic development. And item number 11, letter of support for Doña Ana Trade Port project.
On those four items, does anybody have any questions regarding those items?
Mr. Chair, could we hear some more information about 11? please?
I'm sorry?
Could we hear more information about item 11?
Okay. Do we have a presentation on item 11?
All right, if we can pull it up, and for item 11 for Doña Ana, we have the assistant manager for Doña Ana County. If you want to just give a brief description, or the consultants that are going to be making the presentation.
Is it just in the city of
So raise grant.
Good morning, Jonathan Macias, Assistant County Manager for Doña Ana County. We are requesting letter of support specific to a proposal that is going forward for the Accelerator Innovator Grant under the U.S. Department of Treasury. It is intended for us to continue our collaboration and long-term planning for our intent. We see all of you as neighbors and collaborators, and we want to continue to see how we can advance the collaboration as well as look to future innovations that we can bring to the community to address some of the cargo, some of maybe the future deployment for autonomous vehicles, and other things that we can bring while sharing and becoming a model, similar to what was done under the first set of or tranche of funds that were funded under the Innovation Accelerator. And we have our consultants on the line, both Lois and Adam from GLD Partners, if you'd like the full presentation.
I had a question. What is the source of the funding?
U.S. Department of Transportation Innovation Accelerator grant funds. This is the $5 million pot of funds. This is the second go-round of this particular funding. Last year they funded 5, one of which was in Fresno, which we are emulating our application after as well.
Any further questions? You'll see the president.
Well, okay, well, how much are you asking for?
We are asking about 1.5 million
To pay for,
to pay for
The
the
land?
planning.
The
Ellen,
land.
would you like the presentation? We have the,
well, is it for land or
no, it's for long-term planning.
planning?
Mr. Chair, could we just
Say
have a
anything in the-
presentation? I'd like to see the presentation.
You'd like to see the presentation? Okay, if we could see the presentation.
Okay, Adam and Lois, feel free to take it away.
Adam up.
Okay, Jonathan, we've sent sent the deck over to you. We can't seem to share it from remote. Sent it to Harrison earlier.
Adam, did you send it ahead of time or do we have it here?
If you tell me where I should send it, I will send it again to the appropriate place.
Do you want to email it to me?
Yeah, please read the email.
It's ecalvo@elpasompo.org.
Eduardo, it should be there. Thank you. So everyone, while it's being loaded up, what this project is intended to be is part of a newly emerging national supply chain system. As you know, we're going through a significantly challenging time globally and certainly in North America in terms of supply chain issues. There's a significant effort on the part of the White House, the US DOT, and key players in California, seaports, and so forth to create a more streamlined system. This project would be a part of that by the use of creative use of infrastructure in a strategic location and technology. Okay, thank you for that, Eduardo. So it's right now being called the New Mexico Trade Port. It sits in New Mexico. If you could advance, I'll just explain as we go. Just to tell you who we are, we're a project development firm. We work around the world on projects like this with major shippers, investors, and technology companies. We focus on mobility, logistics, and infrastructure and P3 structures. So if you could just keep going. Our work in various sectors over there on the left, we work directly with companies that operate over global supply chains. Our projects in the middle are around the country and around the world. And the mobility aspect, Jonathan mentioned earlier, reference to autonomous and clean energy vehicles. We work directly with lots of companies, from companies that manufacture trucks to technology companies, Google, Waymo, Intel, and so on. Many of those companies are involved, want to be involved in this project. Okay, proceed. So the genesis of this really started with a whole series of projects that were sort of going through or being discussed in New Mexico around infrastructure, around asset development, around logistics assets at the Sunport up in Albuquerque. New Mexico undertook a mobility strategy, which was a statewide strategy, which led to a focus from a state perspective in New Mexico on how to focus on mobility propositions and logistics propositions on I-40 and on I-10. That I-10 project is now the propositioned New Mexico Trade Port, which sits on top of what's been happening in the Santa Teresa area now for quite some time. Okay, next slide. The project is being modeled after a project that we're developing in California today. And we put this up there because all these things intersect, right? And so the California project is about that red dot. That's the Port of Los Angeles. and creating an entirely new paradigm system for rail and for truck for moving cargo much more efficiently and more cleanly up and down through the state. And so there's a whole set of stories around that, but the state's involved, the federal government's investing in the project. There's 9 councils of governments and counties, there's air quality districts, et cetera, et cetera. It would be the largest, most integrated, sophisticated logistics investment system in the world. And if we go to the next slide, we see that project, which is that project in blue, up and down from Los Angeles, as redefining how logistics works on the West Coast. But now we're starting to think about logistics working better across the country, east and west. And the main hub of the problem for the supply chains proposition today is really Los Angeles. It's where most of our international cargo, certainly from Asia, almost all of it moves through Los Angeles today. It's where all the bottlenecks are. And all of those highway corridors and those key markets in red and blue, all that sweeps in and out of Los Angeles. And New Mexico and El Paso sit right at a critical place. That black arc is where, trucks can drive about a day's drive and they have to stop. So somewhere around Gallup and somewhere around Las Cruces, El Paso, they have to stop. So we're at a strategic point in Doña Ana County and in El Paso to take advantage of that proposition and work with the seaports to become an extension, literally, of the seaport. So if this project proceeds, this would be a project that would be a remarkable, unique project where the Port of Los Angeles is putting down roots with you to create an integrated logistics system and then an investment district in your community. I'm going to speed along just because I know there's time issues. Next slide. So as we think about El Paso region, and particularly that part of Doña Ana County, we got that strategic corridor, I-10, really busy corridor. It's the only interstate that goes across the entire country. Critically, you're right in between, the Los Angeles market and therefore the Asian sweep markets that are flowing through LA, and the core of the Texas market, the Texas Triangle, and then markets into the Midwest and into the US South. So we sit at that strategic place on that strategic corridor. We also have the north-south. So we have this north-south, east-west, and we know you all know that as well and better than we do. So we have that T proposition. So cargo moving east and west and north and south, and they collide. We're creating this new and unique product, which is not just a location, but purpose-built logistics infrastructure, and then the use of technology to define it in a different way, but then overlaid with a series of partnerships like the Port of Los Angeles. We become part of something larger. This product becomes a go-to as opposed to an attractive location. So the international border crossings in the region are all extraordinarily valuable. The one at Santa Teresa that crosses directly into the area is obviously quite valuable. The Union Pacific is supportive of the project. We're actually spending a lot of time with the BNSF as well, because the BN's facility in El Paso is sort of just as close as the UP's intermodal facility in Doña Ana County, because there's so much land and everything is so close together. Doña Ana County is planning a robust expansion of its airport to handle very significant cargo craft. And there's an existing business base in the region and then in the Santa Teresa area. If we add all that up and combine that with this Port of Los Angeles extension, this clean energy proposition, and this purpose-built P3 focused infrastructure, we become an important element in the national supply chain system. Okay, next slide. So this is the district. It's Santa Teresa. The boundaries include the Union Pacific Intermodal and the Doña Ana County Airport and the international border crossing. And it's on much of the land up the escarpment that's zoned appropriately. There's nothing made up here. It's the area that I think folks are defining as the Santa Teresa industrial area now. We're defining this as a niche national product. If we do this right, we think this becomes part of a larger system of investment, not just a site in, that is well located and well priced. It's about 25,000 acres if you add it all up. You develop over 300 million square feet of development and ultimately a lot of jobs. We'll talk a little bit about the nature of the sort of market that we're focused on, we think can be attracted here. Okay, next slide. So what constitutes this trade port? So if you want to click, there's a series of items that'll pop up. These are the key elements of the trade port. So whoever's clicking, if you just want to click here and there, keep going. Some bits will show up. So the truck mobility complex is a key element in the project, and this is a place where clean energy vehicles are fueled. This is a place where automated cargo is handled. And so think of an intermodal rail facility. This is kind of like an intramodal truck facility. It's handling cargo. It's really not a truck stop. It's a truck complex. That's handling clean fueling and cargo handling. It would be unique, and it would connect to a system of similar facilities in California in that inland port project. Around the intermodal facility, with the Port of Los Angeles, the proposition is to build a forward deployment zone, which essentially becomes kind of a new version of the Inland Empire. So we see cargo moving through the ports, on rail, on truck, to this location, to a very large complex of distribution. For that distribution that doesn't need to stay in Los Angeles, it comes here, and then it stars out to markets in the Midwest. A series of roadway systems that can support automated trucking, high velocity cargo around the airport, and ultimately then a lot of manufacturing is the whole point to the project. We'll continue. Let's go to the next slide. So after a lot of market analysis and competitiveness analytics that we've done, we think there's a bit of what works in the region today, and we think but for the streamlined logistics access to key supply chain points in Mexico, in the US, in Asia, and the seamlessness of all that connectivity, that markets in these sectors would be would create a far better proposition for El Paso region to attract investment in these manufacturing and cargo movement distribution sectors. Okay, next. So as Jonathan spoke about, the county is going to submit a proposition to US DOT to be designated a national accelerator. And the project in California that I mentioned gained that. There are 5 projects of national significance today. The California project is one of those. DOT is going out for another round, and that's it. And they're going to award between 1 and 5 more projects to be called nationally significant and gain this accelerator status, which means the Secretary's office and the P3 experts in the federal government want to be part of the project. They want to put some money into the project. They want to be a conduit for more public investment, but to support the region and Doña Ana County to attract other private investment to this public investment in infrastructure. So it's kind of a P3 exercise where the federal government says, uniquely to anything we've seen before, that they actually want to roll up their sleeves and be a shoulder-to-shoulder partner in the delivery of the project. Okay, and then the last slide just suggests the folks that are involved. This is from the beginning until the end, this is a public-private project. There's a series of projects which will be public and private. On the clean energy side, El Paso Electric's been very involved, very supportive. And we put examples of others, hydrogen manufacturers, companies that are making trucks, automated trucks, automated cargo handling equipment, investment partners that invest in infrastructure, the Port of Los Angeles. We were working with UPS yesterday, a series of fleet operators. On the telecom and cargo data side, running right through your region and right through this district are a series of very important transcontinental fiber lines. And we'd like to take advantage of that by an integrated system with the Port of Los Angeles for cargo data management, which would again be part of the layer of products that are added, where if you're located here, you know where your cargo is on the ocean, through the port, in this location, and onward by this dedicated system. And at the bottom, a series of regional players, New Mexico DOT, NMSU, UTEP is supportive and has provided a letter, the New Mexico Chamber. Los Angeles Metro, which is Los Angeles County, is supportive of this project because it supports their objectives to clean the air in Los Angeles and so forth. And a series of others on the agricultural side, National Agricultural Transportation Coalition, your Borderplex Alliance, and the Industrial Association. And I think we're asking the MPO to provide their letter of support and work with the county and us on the project as it proceeds. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Adam. And the last thing I just wanted to close with is that this is also in line with what is currently concurrently taking place at the UTEP campus in terms of the Bi-National Infrastructure Task Force, which is convening not only Texas, New Mexico, but also representation from Chihuahua. Secretary Alicia Keys from the Economic Development Department is committed to this project, as well as the governor. And so we're really trying to make a serious effort for the total north-south collaboration, as well as east-west. So thank you very much.
Okay, do we have any questions? It was a very excellent presentation. Thank you very much. If we have no questions, we are still considering items number 8.
Chairman,
Mr. Gonzalez.
you did mention something about it helps LA with the issues.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, is non-attainment included in the discussion with regard to how they're gonna apply for this? And how does that add to those issues for El Paso? Non-attainment is a big issue here.
Right. So I think obviously a project of this size, would generate a lot of activity, and, we would need to analyze that as part of the impacts. The other thing that I'm concerned about this project as well, I personally think it's a great idea, but access to that port. I mean, right now, the only access that we have to Santa Teresa really is our craft through Pito Manage, right? So if all this happens, of course, we're gonna have a lot of more traffic, and, it would be one of the concerns that we have. However, because this is in the planning stages, I think it's, we would have a lot of say, a lot of participation in how this all plays out, and make sure that the impacts, whether it's air quality or, traffic congestion for, vehicles and all that, that is all taken into account.
Eduardo, may I respond? I think one of the things, sure, I'll come to I know they can hear the virtual world here.
I think Eduardo makes some great points about the potential for congestion as we're seeing over on Artcraft. But as y'all may remember, there was a July 2021 presentation by TxDOT where they laid out some of the lateral flyovers that they intend for long-term development. And so that is actually also being actively considered. It's a known issue, given the increased urban density out there, and also with the desire to have other means of access. So that definitely is something that we're tracking. And I believe they've been funded in some part, if I'm not mistaken. So they're actively looking for acquisition of those right-of-ways to get those flyovers as soon as possible.
One other question. With regard, I know that this logistical campaign is really for land, but is air incorporated into the thought process?
Yes, City Manager Gonzalez, if you recall, we talked about how this is also focusing on multimodal, so air cargo, specifically from some of the Asian markets, is something that we're targeting.
So I asked that because I had another question on
Sure.
to follow that, and that is, why isn't it being located near an airport more advantageous?
Because within the region, right now, the position is that the jet port will focus on cargo, whereas Las Cruces is wanting to focus on commercial and passenger.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Any further questions? Thank you. Okay, I think we had still decided to take items 8, 9, 10, and 11 together. So as a motion for support, is there a motion for that?
So move.
I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion regarding any of those items? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. The motions.
All right, so we're moving now to item number 12. Items 12 and 13 are tied together. They relate to the process that leads to the adoption of the MPO documents. Before we get there, I just wanted to give some brief, make some a brief introduction to where we are. The public comment period that will be discussed under item 12 is one of the elements. It's one of the final pieces of work that completes the process to develop a new transportation plan, which is the 2050 RMS. It is a process that has taken us about 2.5 years, something that we started in pretty much in the summer of 2019. So I wanted to show you. This piece of paper is the first schedule that we developed that spells out the entire process for 2.5 years leading to today. This is, I mean, of course, we made it prettier, but I love this one. It's been hanging in my office for the last 2.5 years. And it really shows the, back then, we were targeting the approval of the documents in January of this year to give us about almost 10 months for the next step, which is the approval of the document, sending it to the consultative partners and for approval. 2.5 years ago, we had no idea that COVID was going to hit. And since then, we've had MPO, staff retirements, people moving on, new people coming in. We've had, leave for babies, and we're happy to have those folks back. There's been a lot of things. So the January moved to March. So I am very happy to report that we are pretty much on schedule. We're giving the consultative partners more than 7 months to review everything before we hit the November deadline, which is the expiration of the 4-year clock for conformity. Okay, so November of 2022 is when we turn into pumpkins. The 4-year clock expires, and of course we're looking at that date very carefully. And that's why we developed this schedule from early on. So with that, just wanted to put it into perspective. So if we move now to item 12, which is the El Paso MPO responses to comments from the 45-day public comment period for the Regional Mobility Strategy RMS 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, MTP, RMS Transportation Conformity Report, and the RMS 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program. Yeah. So staff would like to recommend that the board adopt the report, which again, this report is tied into the MTP document. And but we brought it here and highlighted it as a specific item for to ensure transparency and make sure that there was sufficient discussion on this. I know that there is a lot of public comment and people that have signed up for item 13, which is the adoption. I don't see anybody signed up for item 12.
Okay, to be clear, the item 12 is strictly regarding the comments received during the public comment period of this item. So that's where we are. If there's no questions to Eduardo, is there a motion to approve them?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There's no opposition, the motion carries.
All right, item 13 is the RMS 2050 MTP, RMS 2023, 2026 TIP, and RMS 2050 Transportation Conformity Report. So with this action, the board adopts the documents, and that allows us to submit them to the federal agencies for review. So on this, Mr. Chair, we have a lot of people that have signed up for public comment.
Do you have a presentation first, or is this a standalone item like?
This is there's no presentation.
Okay, so yes, now we can start the public comment.
Okay. All right, so we've got several lists here. Let me start with Mr. Jaime Gandara. So, Mr. Chair, just to remind everybody, you have 3 minutes. So please, given that the number of comments, please, stick to the 3 minutes.
Good morning, my name is Jaime Gandara. I'm a lifelong resident of Sunset Heights, the neighborhood that was first chopped up and devastated by I-10 back in the 1950s. Something that took roughly a third of the neighborhood and chopped it up and to let I-10 go through. And since then, there have been a couple of expansions of lanes and things, and now there's a proposal to expand it some more and essentially move the freeway traffic somewhere between 75 and 100 feet closer to the neighborhood to where the roar of traffic at a line of houses all along Sunset Heights between downtown and UTEP is going to increase, because you're going to expand the freeway and you will expand the traffic, and an expansion of the freeway and in adding the lanes, the access lanes that they're going to add on either side, you're going to make local movement between the neighborhood Sunset Heights and other neighborhoods toward El Paso High and the downtown area more difficult, making it pedestrian traffic difficult, and making bicycle traffic more difficult, and automotive traffic also. I don't believe that it's necessary. The idea is that the problem with our situation is that all the main arteries are crammed between the point of the mountain and the river. And that's the problem that needs solution. You gotta move some roadways and some main traffic arteries away from the point of the river, because you keep funneling everything into the same area, and eventually you just build a huge funnel of roadways, and you get rid of the neighborhood and eventually even encroach some more on downtown. In any event, the neighborhood itself doesn't need any further tearing apart, and the expansion is going to create more noise, more air pollution, and actually the noise is a more severe problem. And I have not seen any discussion or any suggestion that they have any noise abatement in it, the way they do with other neighborhoods along the freeway and along US 54 and the loop, where you see noise fences to protect people from the onslaught and the roar of traffic. And I think that you can, especially if you're talking about Doñana and making that a hub, the connection to Doñana is, as was mentioned.
Thank you, Mr. Gandara.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Representative Peter Schwarzbein. Apologies, I should have called on him first, being that he's an elected official. So if you're there, Representative.
Yes, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody, and good morning. Again, my name is Peter Schwarzbein, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of El Paso, also District 1 City Council Representative, and I'm here to speak in support of the 2050 MTP. This is a very solid, comprehensive document with outside of a couple comments, I think really takes into account our entire region. And most importantly, it's multimodal in its analysis and recommendations. Specifically, I would like to go and lend support about the fact that the downtown portion of I-10 needs to be modernized, and that deck park can be done as part of this I-10 modernization efforts. Recently, City Council passed a resolution in support of both of these ideas and facts. In addition, that resolution also supported the fact that this downtown portion of I-10 should take into account the urban context and nature of where this modernization of I-10 will be occurring as well. We have seen also time and time again cities such as Phoenix and Dallas and others, by adding a deck park or a capping of the freeway, can add a tremendous value, not just economically, but culturally as well, lifting the quality of life and support of the cities as well. I think that this project takes all those things into account, and I think it also supports the needs of this community, not just today, but into the future as well. So I just wanted to speak on those points. In addition to that, I do feel that there is a need to look at approving this MTP project for 2050, but look at possibly amending it to include a project that is extremely important to the future of this. Both the 2045 Destino plan as well as the recently completed Texas Border Master Plan call for a pedestrian-oriented transit opportunity, international mass transit, specifically within the downtown core of El Paso. As we know, in a 21st century economy, it's vitally important not just to move goods and freight across the border in a safe and efficient way, but people as well. Human capital is the driving force in most 21st century economies, and El Paso and Juarez in our border region are no different. And so there is a need, I think, to go and look at doing a project like that, again, that has already been identified in the Texas Border Master Plan, as well as the Destino 2045 plan. And again, with the Binational Border Task Force, Infrastructure Task Force that Congressman Escobar and others are organizing, this is a very important time to be looking ahead at what's possible, not just for the short term, but the medium and long term for our regional community as well. And with that, again, want to thank you again for allowing me to speak in support of these plans and of the 2050 MTP. Thank you and have a great day, everyone.
All right, next, have Chairman Ted Houghton.
For the record, my name is Ted Houghton. I chair the El Paso Mobility Coalition of the El Paso Chamber of Commerce. I'm former chairman of the Texas Transportation Commission, and I want to lend my support to the 2050 MTP plan, and specifically the modernization of I-10 through El Paso, and hopefully in the very near future, a deck that goes on top of it. And I appreciate your all's time here today. Thank you.
Next, we have Cito Negron on behalf of Commissioner Stout.
Good morning. My name is Cito Negron. I'm here on behalf of El Paso County Commissioner David Stout. He appreciates the extension of the public comment period and the work of the MPO staff to attempt to answer the many questions posed, not just by him, but by many others. While members of the public asked to extend public comment, it was not until the county did so that the opportunity arose. He appreciates the support of the County Commissioners Court in helping make that happen and helping give the public more voice. About 50 members of the public, including organizational representatives, emailed, called, or showed up in person in opposition to Downtown 10, which is in the MTP. We've heard from at least one person that they sent an email that wasn't read and is not in the backup to item 12. There were 8 people in favor. Previous to that meeting, the El Paso MPO received 61 comments during the 45-day period, public comment period. 37 comments from 33 unique commenters mentioned the Downtown 10 project, with 33 opposed. One of the commissioner's questions: what projects has the MPO prioritized to reduce the disproportionate impact on environmental justice communities in the currently proposed TIP and MTP? Generated a response that the regional TDM analysis on the baseline year and forecast years did not find any disproportionate impacts of the transportation system on environmental justice communities. So perhaps that question was incorrectly phrased. But as the city resolution referenced by Representative Swartzbein also acknowledged, there's no question the highway itself produces disproportionate impacts. In fact, one can just look at the neighborhoods next to the I-10 Connect project recently completed, where they're suffering from cracked foundations and cracked walls because of the increase in traffic, noise, vibrations, presumably also air pollution, although that hasn't been measured. So we're not sure of the technical terms, but maybe we need to be more specific in our questions and ask for a hotspot analysis on disproportionate impacts, because the claim that there are none doesn't hold water. We'll say a bit more about these issues in relation to Downtown 10 on the next item, which offers an opportunity to address disproportionate impacts, but not as currently proposed with any of the three alternatives, or frankly, with a deck, which is a downtown amenity, but not environmental justice for those most affected in neighborhoods east of downtown. Instead, there was a tremendous push to justify widening and frontage roads instead of rethinking equity both in our regional investments and in how we mitigate the impact of the highway, instead of making it worse, then working around the edges to mitigate how much worse we made it for environmental justice communities. This is not modernization. This is 1950s technology. Finally, Commissioner Stout asks that you consider an Environmental Justice Citizen Review Committee as a mechanism for education, engagement, and policy development. Thank you.
All right, next we have Mr. Joe Goodenrath.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Joe Goodenrath. I'm the Executive Director of the El Paso Downtown Management District. The DMD is a municipal management district created under state law in 1997, and I'm here today on behalf of our board of directors. We're a mixture of downtown property and business owners. I'm here in support of this item, specifically the modernization of the downtown portion of I-10 and the concept of a deck park that can be done as part of the modernization efforts. But we need to make sure that these projects not only support traffic flow, but support the downtown's ongoing revitalization. Specifically, I've asked this body and the community at large to join us in supporting the accommodation of expanded vehicular capacity to the downtown from the downtown and on I-10 in its entirety to reduce future traffic concerns. We'd also ask that PECSDOT limit the expansion of I-10's to its current footprint, act in good faith negotiations with property owners should property acquisition be required, improve the entrance and egress out of downtown for all types of traffic, and the establishment of long-term strategies to divert truck traffic to alternative routes around the downtown. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Kathleen Stout. Ms. Stout? Okay. Next, we have Debbie Nathans. Ms. Debbie Nathan? Alisa Garza?
Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa Garza, and I'm a resident of District 7. And my house is 5 blocks away from the highway that segregates our neighborhoods, and my sister has really bad asthma. She takes treatments every single night and she can't go out on windy days because of the dust and all the pollution that's outside. So I can't help but think that her problems can be attributed to us living 5 blocks away from a highway. And when I think about the idea of expanding highways that are in this neighborhood, in this community, I think it's really like detrimental, and it's a reflection of environmental injustice. And I wanted to respond to the response I received from the MPO regarding my questions for the I-10 expansion. And TxDOT said the number and locations of properties to be acquired has not been finalized, and any properties acquired will be required by federal law to fair compensation. And the word fair itself is subjective. And it is really concerning to see people push a project that would ultimately displace folks and force them to move against their will. And the published report has already stated that the expansion would not decrease congestion, it would eventually just increase it. And I asked a question about sustainability aspects for the deck plaza. They said the Transportation Policy Board does consider the environmental impacts, and the NPO only reviews for conformity with air standards. Once again, it is interesting to see organizations and boards use words like environmental impacts, sustainability, green spaces, air standards, or modernization, which is a new word I just heard today. Because if people were really paying attention, they would know we are in a climate crisis. And scientists around the world have been saying one way to mitigate climate change is to divest from fossil fuels. So I'm not really sure why people are advancing a project that would expand highways that would ultimately increase pollution and increase our dependency on cars and fossil fuels. And transportation policy is climate change policy. And we really need to start thinking about investing in public transportation because it will help us mitigate the climate crisis. Thank you.
All right, next we have a Brian Monroe. Brian Monroe. Mr. Bob Storch.
Good morning. I'm Bob Storch. I live in Sunset Heights. The long-range transportation policy adopted here today will affect quality of life in El Paso for many years to come. Unfortunately, these plans spend billions of dollars building more roads, highways, which in the end will lead to more sprawl, congestion, and pollution. There is no comprehensive plan to divert through traffic around the city or congestion within the city. In fact, the priority project, Downtown 10, will increase congestion. There's no comprehensive plan to provide for mass transit to more job sites or where people live. In fact, this plan by 2050, the percentage of population living near transit will actually decrease. There's no comprehensive plan to revitalize the street grid to improve efficient traffic flow within the city. Complete streets where people can safely walk, bike, and drive stimulates economic development and livability. There are plans for bikeways, but mostly that consists of painting stripes on streets. Unprotected bike lanes and sidewalks next to traffic that's driving at 40+ miles per hour are not safe, and people won't use them. The public survey that you conducted for the MTP ranked safety, quality of life, and environment as most important. Yet most of the money in these plans will build more roads or widen roads to increase speed and capacity for cars. City Council last week passed a resolution calling for the elimination of the suburban-style frontage roads from the I-10 segment 2. The independent traffic engineer hired by the county suggested eliminating some central city exits and redesigning the frontage roads to integrate with the street grid to divert local traffic away from the highway. Downtown and uptown have connections across I-10. Wider sidewalks and protected bike lanes would make them safer and more pleasant to use. We need more safe, walkable, bikeable connections between neighborhoods away from downtown. In 2012, Plan El Paso promised to make El Paso the least car-dependent city in the Southwest. To reach that goal, we need a better transportation plan. We can and must do better. Thank you.
All right, next we have Mr. Scott White. Scott White. All right, Angelica Rodriguez.
Good morning. My name is Angelica Rodriguez. I am a resident of Sunset Heights and a longtime resident of El Paso. I'm speaking today in support of the 2050 MTP. It is critical that we have a safe and modernized freeway, both for our residents here in El Paso and our region, as well as those traveling through our beautiful city. This modernization would reduce a clogged downtown freeway area and provide the opportunity for a deck plaza. The deck plaza would increase green space in the downtown area and stitch together areas such as Sunset Heights with the downtown area and its surrounding neighborhoods. With the deck plaza, it'll be imperative to provide that the surrounding areas are pedestrian, cyclist, and family friendly. I support the 2050 MTP and as an effort to increase safety, green space, and community connection. Thank you so much for your time.
Mr. Chair, Debbie Nathan and several others submitted emails, and they wanted us to read it into the record. So if I may do that now. Okay, so this one comes from Miss Debbie Nathan. And please time me, because it may go after 3 minutes. All right, dear MPO, your responses to questions I submitted during the latest public comment period are mostly misleading, non-responsive, or both. I specifically asked you how MPO is monitoring or intends to monitor for potential hotspots involving PM 2.5 particulates. Please note that I did not ask about PM 10 particulates, only 2.5 particulates. This is an important difference. PM 2.5 particles are relatively much more dangerous to health than PM 10 particulates are. And we, as a community group, have capacity to measure them near I-10 downtown. Our Citizens Air Monitoring Group in Central El Paso is picking up frequent spikes in PM 2.5 particulate levels in Sunset Heights within a block of I-10. This surpasses the World Health Organization maximum level. As well, it is over the EPA allowed maximum level. But rather than speak to this issue, when you responded to my comments, you ignored PM 2.5 particulates and instead responded with a straw man of PM 10. Further, you answered that TCEQ has 12 air monitors in El Paso. Technically speaking, there is a list of 12 monitors on TCEQ's website. In fact, however, 4 of those monitors are non-functional. They measure nothing. They currently exist only on paper. This leaves only 8 functioning monitors in the entire city. Of those, only 3 in the whole city measure PM 2.5 particles. And by the way, only 2 monitors in the city measure PM 10 particles. You claim that there are monitors near highways. In fact, there are no monitors by I-10 that measure PM 2.5 particulates. I ask you again, to what extent are you aware of the possibility, if not frank probability, that hotspots for 2.5 particulates are or will become an issue for decisions to widen the highway? Also, what plans do you have to address the fact that TCEQ does not have monitoring capacity in El Paso to identify and quantify hotspots? I would ask a member of MPO to answer me and the community right now at this meeting this morning, as soon as staff finishes reading my questions aloud. Yours, Debbie Nathan. Okay. Next, let me call on Mr. Jose Reyes.
This is not been an open session.
Yes, I remember seeing it.
Morning, Chair, Board. My comments short, in the interest of time. First of all, I am in support of the 2050 MTP. The 2050 MTP is a comprehensive plan that includes the entire region, and it is multimodal in its analysis. MTP, it is the lifeline of the regional transportation program. Showing support of MTP will only assist help El Paso and EPMPO obtaining funding for our projects. The feds and Austin, people in Austin like to see a unified region when it comes to allocating funding. We may not agree on every project in MTP, but overall, EPMPO does its best to address the needs of the region as a whole. The big discussion on MTP is downtown widening project. I'll tell you from personal experience working as a consultant with the TxDOT for 20 years. I know TxDOT always does its best for the public and for the region. And matter of fact, most of the engineers that I know work for El Paso District are lifelong El Pasoans. So their interest is in the community, and they try to do the best for this community. I only ask to get an opportunity to continue to work with you in developing the final plan for the downtown I-10 project. I'm confident they will do what's best for the community as a whole. Thank you.
All right, next we have Mr. Joseph Rosillo.
All right, I'm gonna do my best to save your time and mine. I am Joe Rosillo. I represent Stunt Construction here in El Paso. We represent between 100 and 350 employees at any given time in the area that work and play in this community and rely on projects like this for their livelihood. I know that sounds self-serving, but at the same time, I think we already found the reasons of why this is necessary from just what transpired in the meeting before, and I know that everybody at this table knows that. But I also wanted to say that the supply chain issues are real in our industry, and the expansion and everything that's happening in this city right now is only going to get worse. So we are in support of this item. Thank you very much.
Angie Rosales.
Good morning, my name is Angie Rosales and I too am with Sun Construction. I am a native El Pasoan, lifelong resident, proud El Pasoan, and support the plan. We had the honor of building just recently the I-10 CD lanes, US 54, and are gearing up right now to start on the I-10 widening. Having been involved in building a lot of the critical infrastructure for El Paso, we know that there is a great need, and as our community continues to grow, we need to address those needs. So we fully support the MTP 2050, the modernization of I-10, specifically around the downtown area, and the Deck Park. It is also critical as we continue to work collectively as a community at addressing and bringing economic development opportunities for our region. So we fully support the plan. Thank you for your time today.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to read another one that we received by email. This is from Vero Ann Carrillo. It says, good morning. I'd like to submit the following comment to be read during today's meeting, please. I've submitted public comment today to ask that the downtown 10 not be included in the TIP. Widening freeways has been shown ineffective. The freeway in Katy, Texas demonstrates this very well. At 26 lanes wide, it is still congested. Widening doesn't work. It invites more traffic because of induced demand. Please remove the downtown 10 from the TIP and seek alternative designs using feedback from the people who live in the area along Copia and Executive. Thank you, Vero Ann Carrillo. All right, next, let me bring, or call it Joel or Joel Guzman.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joel Guzman, and I stand to support the RMS 2050 transportation plan. 18 years ago, I moved into Sunset Heights, and one of the main reasons was because of the easy access to the freeway, really to all the points in the region. My work regularly takes me all the way to Horizon, and all the way west to Las Cruces, where my alma mater is. And also my folks live in the Mission Valley, so I love the access to the border highway. And I'm saying this as a way to acknowledge that the freeway is in downtown and it's an asset to many of us. And I just don't see it going anywhere. We're simply not turning back time. But the projected traffic growth in our metro area needs to be addressed. And after reviewing the plan, I believe it does a good job in providing ultimately a strategy to address the three things that I think we care about. Reduce projected downtown traffic congestion coming, manage the air pollution, and ultimately possibly save a few bucks with that unique park that we would be able to build. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, another email. This is from Ms. Kathy Stout. Greetings. Thank you for permitting me to make public comment. Alas, my email for the March 9 meeting was not entered into the draft record. I wonder how many other citizens' comments disappeared. I'm against the downtown I-10 expansion for many reasons. The additional pollution it will create in our already polluted region. The way expanded lanes on highways will lock us into fossil fuel dependent transportation for decades during the world's climate change emergency. The plans that will take people's homes and businesses in areas close to the border where the population is approximately 90% Hispanic Mexican American, more than the 80% plus figure for the region. Scholars in the future will point to the deepening environmental racism of your existing plans unless plans are halted or reversed, and the waste of taxpayers' money. Anything beyond strengthening the roadway in downtown is a waste. There are more reasons. I could go on and on. My questions to you: will you work to pause and or ultimately vote against downtown expansion so that other transportation alternatives may be considered besides downtown, particularly in the high growth, much needed areas of Mission Valley, Border East, and Northeast? Will you create a citizen advisory committee for strengthened public involvement? Thank you, Kathy Stout. All right, now, Mr. Rick Bonard.
Good morning, my name is Rick Bonard. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I have basically two concerns, one of which is I think the project should move forward, however, continue, as the previous speaker said, in the footprint that's already in existence. I don't think expanding it is an answer, and it's actually detrimental to the neighborhoods around there. The second thing that I'm most concerned about is as to the deck park. Although it's a great idea, I don't think you're being completely honest with the public in telling how that will be funded. When you say we're going to have a deck park as part of this project, people assume that it will be paid for, but it's not. And so that I think needs to be really addressed and made very transparent as to how that will be funded and who will pay for that project. Great idea. I like the idea of it, especially if you remain within the current footprint, but you also have to identify who and how it will be paid for. Thank you.
All right, another that we received via email. This is from Scott White. Good morning. I write to you today from Oklahoma City, where I'm attending the 30th Congress of New Urbanism, a gathering of hundreds of some of the brightest minds who are working on ways to make our communities better, more resilient, and economically vibrant. And their consensus is that freeways do not make cities better. A finding the MTP 2050 bears out. According to the performance measures included therein, if we follow the build plan for $7 billion, we can improve the travel time index just 3% over the no build option. That's seconds for some trips and a minute or two for others. Of course, that assumes getting there faster is the only thing that matters. I say this as a first goal in the MTP is safety. And safety is really about preventing crashes and other incidents which higher speeds can actually cost. 2021 stands as proof that we and all of Texas were relying on congestion to slow traffic down to save speeds. Reports indicate a far greater share of high-speed crashes that lead to far too many deaths and critical injuries. So why we are told the costs associated with congestions are bad for business, the cost of these serious and fatal crashes, according to the National Safety Council, are exponentially higher. Getting there safely is more important than how fast one gets there. But that's not what we measure. That's not what we prioritize. That's not how the RMS is designed. I have said it on numerous occasions before this very board. We need to plan for people rather than just building for vehicles. While I appreciate the time and effort that have gone into putting together these plans, it would be the height of fiscal mismanagement to implement the $7 billion plan that barely improves our transportation system while increasing BMP, air pollution, and all sorts of other adverse impacts on our region. The MTP tells us this, but we're still focused on adding capacity that won't improve our system. It's time we recognize this plan will impact our children and their children. The projects we build today will be with us for at least the next 50 years. If there aren't going to create a transportation network that will benefit us all, then we need a new plan. The MTP goals call for a safer, cleaner, more transit-friendly future. If you approve and implement this plan, we're going to get more traffic, congestion, and air pollution. We need a better plan that will benefit this whole community. We can and must choose to do better. I ask you, one of you, to add an amendment to this document calling for upon its approval, a new and better MTP that lays out a cleaner pathway to a cleaner, more sustainable, and multimodal approach to meeting our transportation needs. A plan with equitable scenario planning so we can explore many options on how best to meet our region's transportation needs. Let's make it safer, easier, and more comfortable to walk, bike, and take transit so that we people have options so they don't feel like they have to drive so much. Let's create a plan that doesn't just invoke the future, but where people like you and I really can work together to create a clear path for how we're going to reach our transportation goals. Thank you, Scott White. All right, next, Mr. Kelvin Craker.
Thank you, Chair and Board. I'm Kelvin Craker. I'm here today to speak in favor of the MTP and the process that's been applied here. I'm speaking personally as a lifelong El Paso resident and with I think a pretty good cross-section representing a wonderful borderland family. Grew up in zip code 79930. My wife grew up in 03 and now we live in 02. We've got family, cousins, uncles, aunts that extend down to Mission Valley and out to the northeast. And one thing that ties us all together is transportation. It's what drives our household economies. I'm sure like many of you, when my family gets together around the dinner table or at Peter Piper Pizza for the kids, we talk about, well, they ask me, you know, what's our community doing to improve transportation? How are the coming years going to be better than the past years? And that's really shaped my family. My father commuted back and forth over the Bridge of the Americas. The family I married into was here because of Fort Bliss. And with this knowledge that I'm in transportation, we all think about how transportation will help us to get to school, to work, to see our families, to church, shopping. It's really what drives our household economies, and I think that's what the MTP needs to reflect as well. We get around on our highways, on our freeways. We do use our surface streets, and from time to time, we ride our bicycles, we use sidewalks, and we use transit. Let's keep things in that perspective. Downtown as a destination, yes, by all means. Deck Park would be great, and I think many of our families would use it several times a year. But what we really rely on is getting around to these needs for our families, as I've described. I believe the MTP and the agenda today, the process that's been followed, reflects this balance that our families need. The MPO has produced a thoughtful plan. I think it goes deeper and it's more refined, more reflective than previous versions. I-10 needs investment. We can see the pavement, which is repaired regularly during nighttime closures. We see the bridges, which have vertical clearance issues and structural needs for the future. Those have to be repaired, along with our surface streets and some money for multimodal as well. I encourage the board today to pass this MTP.
One more email. This is from Mr. Brian Monroe. Dear EPO, the city of El Paso must rise above its own hubris and look toward other cities that have attempted such expansion projects. The idea of reducing congestion by expanding highways has been proven to be false and indeed has shown to increase congestion. This is due to the economic concept of induced demand. This states that drivers that would otherwise not take the freeway and instead utilize alternative forms of transportation would be enticed by an expanded highway and simply contribute to the congestion. The more supply highway lanes, the more demand. This is the exact opposite outcome of what the expansion is attempting to achieve. The perfect example of this failure is the Katy, Texas freeway, which has seen its congestion worsen over several decades due to expansion. Instead of following the poor policy ideas of other cities, we must set our own standard and formulate solutions that will work for El Paso while ensuring our historic and underserved communities are not trampled on and overtaken by greed. For this reason, I ask as a citizen of El Paso that downtown 10 is not included in the TIP. Thank you for your time, Brian Monroe. All right, next, Ms. Rossi Cardenas.
Good morning, Chairman and TPB Transportation Policy Board. My name is Rossi Cardenas, and I am a citizen and professional of El Paso, also board member of El Paso Trade and Manufacturing Council. I'm here to support the MTP, and I believe that the MTP, as you all have seen, and most of us have agreed, has considered the growing transportation needs of our region. The projects that have been included in this plan are projects of regional significance and relevant to our metro area. Definitely, the projects will improve our streets and roads, and most importantly, they will address safety issues for all of its users. It is imperative that the MTP projects do align with our regional plan and vision, which is to enhance the quality of life. It is imperative that we upgrade the I-10 facility segments. As most of us experience segment 2 and 3 become traffic funnels when we travel east to west and west to east. And as we have been presented today, the stretch of I-10 is utilized for many of our regional economic development factors and drivers. And we all can agree that is much needed, the widening of the I-10, as we are already restrained and constricted by our beautiful mountains. And we gotta make some good decisions here for the future of our region. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Tracy Yellen.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see you, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here along with the other speakers this morning. My name is Tracy Yellen, and I am the CEO of the Paso del Norte Community Foundation and Paso del Norte Health Foundation. And as you all know, we've been involved in a couple of alternate transportation projects over the last few years. The Paso del Norte Trail, which is a county-wide trail that has seen recent development and work in the Tornillo area and has some priority segments on the Mission Trail, the MCA, and Sunland Park. With all of your support over the years, we've seen miles of trail added from Escalante to Isleta, and then also in the Upper Valley. We've also been involved in the visioning for a deck plaza. We think this will be a really important amenity for our entire region, connecting neighborhoods. not only downtown and Sunset Heights and the Rio Grande neighborhoods, but as an attraction and a complement to a really robust alternate transportation system. So we really appreciate your consideration and approval of the 2050 MTP plan. I think this puts us in a great position to access the resources this community needs, particularly from outside, so that we can continue to develop and grow as a region. Thank you so much.
The last one that I have here on the list is Matthew McElroy, but I believe he is not in the room. Had some travel plans, so just want to double check, Mr. McElroy. Okay. I believe that's all the comments that we have. Let me check with Marisol and Gabby. Are these all the ones that we received by email?
Yes.
Okay, there is still a couple that signed up for item 14, but I think we're done with public comment on item 13.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we are now in the discussion portion of item 15. Any discussion from the board? Any comments?
There was a speaker, Kathy Stout, who said that her email was not included. Could you do something to make sure that it is included? If you don't have it, if you can get in touch with her, and so she can forward it to you and it can be included.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was a surprise to me. I was not aware of that, but if we missed it, yeah, we'll definitely, include it in the record and respond to it.
Thanks.
Other comment from the board regarding this end of the journey for us? Okay, that being said, is there a motion for the approval of the submission of these documents? Move to approve. Move to approve. Have a motion, is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, no opposition, the motion carries.
Thank you. All right, item 14, funding proposal for the Downtown 10 project to be submitted to the Texas Transportation Commission. Let me start with a little bit of background, and I'll ask Rep. Ortega to help me out, and she has been very active with this. If you recall, starting with back in December of 2019, when the RMS 2020 strategic plan was approved by this board, the Downtown 10 project was identified as the top priority project. However, given the size and the magnitude of the project, which is right now estimated in the ballpark of $750 million, it's a lot of money. So coming up with the correct funding formula for it is a real challenge. If you recall as well, when we started having discussions with the Texas administration and the Texas Transportation Commission, that led to a proposal coming from their end to us that was part of the fiscal year 22 UTP. We received that proposal in the summer of last year. If you recall, it was a proposal where the commission suggested that they would put in about $68 million, $69 million, and we as a region would be burdened with the rest, $680 whatever million. That proposal obviously was not accepted, and but the board authorized us authorized me as the executive director and others to continue engage in discussions with the commission since then. And so we have been doing that, and again, Rep. Ortega has been very active in doing that. So where we are right now, the ball is on our court. We of course rejected the proposal that was given to us in the summer of last year, but it's in our court. So as part of the discussions and the continuous conversations that we had with them, it is clear to me that we have to put local skin in the game. That's been pretty clear from day one. The question is how much? Really, we haven't had a clear answer for that. So what we are doing today is responding to, understanding that the ball is in our court, We identified $150 million right now from the current program that we could move into downtown 10 for that project. By doing this, this is just a proposal. We are not amending the MPO documents today. That may come in the future, but we do need to come to the board and get your blessing to submit this as a proposal so that we can continue the discussions on how to completely fund the project. So again, with knowing that the cost is in the ballpark of $750 million, working together very closely with Tomas Trevino and the El Paso District folks of TxDOT, we identified almost $151 million that you see there on the backup. That is made up of several elements. Before getting into the details, Representative, do you want to?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about it. This is something that we have been working on for a few years. I actually went back and I found a letter that was actually sent basically 2 years ago on March the 24th in 2020. And this was a letter that was sent by the members of our state delegation. And I think, going back and rereading what it says, nothing has really changed from it. And this was a letter that was directed to the chair of the Transportation Commission in Austin, because it is the commission that actually makes these decisions as to how monies are going to be distributed across the state. And let me tell you, it's not an easy thing to do being from El Paso, because El Paso has been somewhat overlooked when it comes to state funding. And we are asking for the biggest amount of funding that we've ever sought for this community. $750 million is quite a bit for a project. And this is money that we have to compete again with other communities. We're talking about 5 major urban metro areas that, for whatever reason, seem to get all of the attention from the state of Texas rather than El Paso. We are so far away from the heart of the state, and so we are overlooked, and we're constantly having to remind them, hey, we're here and we also need money in our community. So this letter was sent to the chair of the commission, where we were saying the El Paso delegation has shared its concerns over the amount of state funding that El Paso receives compared to similar size TxDOT districts. That we were informed that a way to seek the discretionary funding, of course, was through Category 12, and to address the commission on what we believed were our priorities. And so it's been a couple of years that, hey, we've been telling the commission we need help with I-10. I-10, as you've heard from some of the speakers, is kind of like it is the pathway from California to Florida. It is the 4th largest interstate in the country. It's major for international trade, and it is falling apart. We pointed out to the commission of the issue with the delaminating that is occurring. It is an interstate that has outlived its life. It was built in the 1950s. It had a lifespan of 50 years, and it's basically costing this community lots of money because local TxDOT is investing and putting a lot of money in maintenance of this interstate. If you drive through there, it's a patchwork. You can see the patches on I-10. We also know that because it creates problems, we heard problems from one of the speakers with the bridges, the fact that I-10 in the downtown area actually shrinks. We lose a lane when we're coming on both sides, when we're coming into the downtown area. It was built with people not taking into account what was going to happen in the future. So we were pointing out to the chair at that time, the chairman of the commission, that it poses, people have talked about safety, some of the comments that were being made here today. We pointed this out. It poses safety concerns, it poses environmental issues. When there's accidents, repairs, and congestion in common areas. I think we all have heard of things that occur in the downtown area and how it causes problems. If we want to be competitive and try to bring in more money to El Paso through the Transportation Commission, what they're asking of us is to actually kind of jiggle the money around with regard to what they give us, because this is all money that we're kind of moving around. What Mr. Calvo has shown, it's funding that we get from them, but they're saying, you know, you got to tell us that this is priority and you got to put in some money for them to actually give us more. And we need to do that. We have no choice. And I assure you that other communities, all of the other districts are seeking the same funding, and they are willing to do what they ask of them. And so this is a decision as to what that 150 is there. This is something that local TxDOT has worked with our executive director as to which are the best projects that they're not going to disappear. We don't want any of those projects to disappear, but what we're trying to do is put in some funds, transfer some of the funds that we can move around in order to get more monies. You also heard from some of the speakers today as to how that helps economic development. And it just doesn't help it in the downtown area, it helps it in the whole county of El Paso, because you're looking, somebody I think mentioned like 350 workers that they have that work on some of these projects. I mean, you're looking at 750 million that we want for this community that will bring about economic development. It's not easy. I mean, this fight has been going on for quite a while with TxDOT administrators and with the commission. And I mean, I'm so glad that our delegation was actually thought about doing this a few years back. And it's important that we show them, yes, we are united. We are willing to fight for our community. And yes, we're willing to move around some funds. And the best part of the way local TxDOT and Mr. Calvo decided on these projects is it's projects that are TxDOT projects. It's not projects of our local, it's not city, it's not county, it's not smaller communities that are being affected, but it's a way of saying, yes, we are invested, we want that money, we want to be competitive. And I'm happy to answer any questions with regard to what's been going on. I can tell you it has not been an easy process, and it's something that has started quite a few years ago.
Before we have questions, do we have public comment on that?
Yes, sir. We have Cito Negron. You signed up for 14 as well, right?
Good morning. Again, for the record, my name is Cito Negron, speaking on behalf of Commissioner David Stout. As predicted, when this process started, we are being asked to sweep money from other projects identified as regionally significant. Regarding ArtCraft, for example, what does limiting the scope mean? We hope it doesn't mean that you're going to remove one of the direct connects so that it points all of the Santa Teresa traffic towards I-10 East, increasing the pressure on the corridor, creating the need that's not now there or doesn't have to be there because it could go through the Anthony Gap. How much further behind does this put development of the Northeast Bypass? New Mexico is doing its part. What does taking $45 million from Montana mean? This is the part of town that actually is growing and does have a need. Commissioner Stout is not a fan of sprawl, but if you're going to take money from capacity that may actually be needed right now, not 25 years in the future, to support an unnecessary widening downtown, we're grateful the county is doing its due diligence. As you may know, it hired a nationally known traffic modeling expert to review the assumptions behind downtown 10. While members of the public have anecdotally pointed out that downtown is not a congestion spot, not a safety hotspot. In fact, according to the TTI, El Paso had one road in the top 100 congested roads, Airway Boulevard, not downtown 10. which ranks 73 for all vehicles and 68 for trucks. We're not even in the top 100. Meanwhile, we literally just built a highway next to I-10, border west. And now they're telling us we need more highway, and this is the priority. And I remember when this started, there was no one priority. There were 4 priorities. They weren't really ranked. Somehow through that process, it became 1A, 1B. Border highway or border west is not tolled. It may never be tolled. Has that been factored into the projections? And we still have Paisano, so we have 3 major roadways traversing that area. And we're being told that this is a congestion hotspot that requires us to spend the most money ever in El Paso and sweep money from other projects. The county consultant developed information that must be considered. Some of the highlights you've seen, hopefully you read the county's response, but there's one here that ties into a comment that was made by Mr. Croker, who made a good point about the regional system. Total funding is limited, and the singular focus on large highway mega expansion projects is accompanied by insufficient investment in the larger network, particularly in growth areas. Commissioner Stout supports a design that does not take property further harm constituents. TxDOT supposedly was looking at a tunnel concept. The county asked TxDOT to continue looking at that. It has not, and the only alternatives being considered are the expansion. We think there's a better issue. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chair, there is one comment that we received by email. Read it. This came from former State Rep Joe Pickett. Says, I just want to make a few points and plant some questions in board members' minds about what this project is and is not. Do we really need to widen I-10 through downtown, or is it that the justification for an expensive park in a town that deserves more inclusive recreation in other parts of the city? Does the fact that the Border West Expressway that has still not initiated a toll make a difference in traffic modeling? I removed the toll on Cesar Chavez and utilization increased. There is a traffic and revenue study that TxDOT has that most likely shows it is not feasible for the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority, CRRMA, to initiate a toll for that reason. They, the RMA, could actually lose money. I have visited with TxDOT in Austin, and they are willing to look at renegotiating this roadway from being a toll, with a request from the leadership and City of El Paso government and the RMA. Anecdotally, I have heard that the Border West Expressway is still underutilized by some for fear the toll could be initiated any day. What are the priorities in our region that should have more priority? The Northeast Bypass? The RMA should be financing that was used for 601, for Spur 601. I'm sorry, the RMA should be proposing to TxDOT a plan to substitute the pass-through financing that was used for Spur 601. The bonds have been paid off, and our region should be working with TxDOT to secure an annual funding allowance similar to the one used for Spur 601. I don't believe there is the congestion at the center of I-10 through downtown is matched. There is congestion east and west of downtown that needs consideration and would actually do more for the driving public. I do not like to see our precious transportation dollars being used for non-transportation projects, especially when so many others could do more for traffic through and around our region. We have a nearly $600 million investment in the Border West Expressway that has yet to be optimized. Respectfully, Josie Pickett. And I believe that's all the comment that we have.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Blanco was first, and then
Just had a question or a point of clarification, and it may either be to Eduardo or to TxDOT, Mr. Trevino, but under this item, the only project that the MPO pushed back is the US 54 project. Is that correct? And we are not, even though we're doing this, all the other projects are still scheduled for that time. Is that correct?
Yes, except for Pendale. Pendale is also proposed. Now, Pendale is a different story, and I guess Tomas can help me out with that. But
sure. You want me to? That's the same question I got, and I know that we had it in the
last Friday, we had that conversation, and you and I had a conversation yesterday about that, because I can't see that going all the way to 2033. And I appreciate you talking with me yesterday and talking with Tomas and talking about that we would move that and can we put that into the minutes of the notes that we're gonna move it only to 2027? Can that be added on there?
Yes, so speaking of 54, currently it's showing proposed year of 2033. And the reason that is because we have to move it out of the 10 years. So, but that's not to say that in the 24 UTP, we can't bring it back in. And talking to my staff, we can put it in fiscal year 27 letting. So, but
Can we add that to the minutes and part of the motion?
sure, we just can't show it as a proposed year anything sooner than 2033 for now, until the 24 UTP is approved.
But we can move it to the motion to bring it back and bring it forward to do it no later than 2027.
Correct.
Okay. I appreciate y'all working with us.
Sure. And as for the Pendle project, the 16.82 million that the commission awarded the region for this Pendle project is simply not sufficient for the scope of the project that's needed. We've looked at it, we've got some preliminary renderings and schematic developments, and we simply can't do it for the amount submitted by the commission. So it's probably best to reappropriate those dollars because what's needed there at Pendle would probably be cost twice that much, if not more.
Further comment? Commissioner.
Mr. Chair. I just want to make a comment going back to when we first started having these discussions about the potential cost of the I-10 downtown project. And one of my biggest concerns with whether local projects that had already been approved were going to be sacrificed for this massive amount of funding that we were asking to come up with at the local level. And I was assured that that was not going to happen. But yet it looks like that's exactly what is happening. As was correctly just pointed out, we have two that are being suggested to be deprogrammed. Maybe US 54 could be moved to 2027, but that's not by any means guaranteed. We've just heard, at least I've heard for the first time, about the funding that had been allocated for Pendale not being enough. Maybe that's the reason that we need to scrap that process. But I just want to point out that this is exactly what I was afraid was going to start happening, that we were going to see some of these local projects that had already been approved be sacrificed for this massive amount of money that we're expected to get. And I'm just afraid we're going down a slippery slope. I think there's still a lot of remaining questions about the Downtown 10 project. And I feel like by deprogramming these funds, we're putting the cart before the horse because we have some of those questions that are still pending answered.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar question as the senator asked about 54 and Dale. Can we get someone who has the information to opine on the rescoping or proposed rescoping at our craft in that project and how this tranche of funds would affect that program? It doesn't look like it's moving in the fiscal year in terms of letting date, but what are we looking at in terms of how that project will change?
So the amount shown off the ArtCraft project still keeps the entire ArtCraft project intact. The savings that are shown here are attributed to some of the ITS components being included into the I-10 West project. In addition, the original estimate was based on just preliminary concepts. And now that we are into schematic development and have refined those concepts, we can better get an estimate. There was a large contingency of dollars associated with the initial estimate. And but we feel we can keep it intact and still deliver the project for $25 million less. So.
I appreciate the comment. That was much of the communication I got in my office was regarding this particular item, so I want to be very clear about what that would look like going forward, so I appreciate the updated.
Mr. Chairman, let's say that we allocate that money, we vote for it, we allocate it, and then we don't get the 650,000 or 550, I'm sorry, million from TxDOT. What happens to these projects? Are they delayed? Are they?
I need to address that. This is not an allocation. This is a proposal to the commission. The commission can reject this and then the money doesn't move.
And nothing
Stays there. The commission, this is just our proposal to the commission. As of now, these projects are the same and our action today does not change that. This only is our proposal to the commission. Should they reject it, then nothing moves. It's just, everything stays the same.
Mr. Chairman.
This is just an attempt to respond to the commission and what they've asked of us as a region to support the item that we just approved, which is our plan for the future. Now, well, I'll stop there. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank Representative Ortega for all the work that she's done on our behalf. It is a tough pill to swallow to say that we're going to push projects back because of the fact that Houston and Austin has mega projects. That's just a fact. And so this is unprecedented, hadn't happened in the past. And so we are being asked to push projects back. But nothing prevents us from going after different funding allocations at the federal level to augment these projects as we plan going forward. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely.
And I think that if we didn't have something to show in terms of a proposal, I think the further weakening of our position will be realized. So I think that Representative Ortega is very astute, and as is the state delegation, to know that they have to work and compromise with the commission, because this is where we are today as a state in terms of how the dollars have been allocated to mega projects to these major metropolitan areas in Houston and Austin. We're just as important as they are, if not more. We have more issues here. We have to go after the whole idea of making this a metroplex area in the designation, whatever category we need to get lifted, to get more maintenance dollars and just get more dollars in general, because we're not seen as a metro area like these other areas, because they're not counting our region. They're not counting Mexico, they're not counting New Mexico, even though New Mexico is part of the MPO. So I think we have a lot to argue for and advocate for our community at the state level. I think the state delegation is doing a wonderful job of staying together and showing them a united front. So I believe, just even though it's a tough pill to swallow, it's something that's necessary in order to show the state that we're a player and that we understand the situation and the gravity of it, but nothing prevents us from going after additional dollars at the state or federal level to augment these projects in the future.
Chair, can I add something? The point that Mr. Gonzalez makes is great. Yes, absolutely. We can still go after other different pots of money. In fact, at the federal level, and it's, we just received notice that the notice of funding opportunity for 3 federal programs opened up yesterday or the day before yesterday. But the point is that to be competitive at the federal level for these programs, it helps if we already have other money for the project, right? So by showing this 150 million, it helps us. It makes our application for these programs a lot more competitive, because we're already showing commitments to complete the funding. Because the federal program, even the mega program, does not give us, there's not enough money for the whole thing, right? But it helps us if we can get another chunk. And so just to finish up the thought on the funding formula here, we are right now identifying 150 million that we're submitting as a proposal to the commission. We're not amending the MPO plan or the TIP or anything yet. right? But this is a formal proposal that needs to come from the policy board, because, I cannot, I don't speak for the board, right? I cannot submit this on my own. So that's why we're here. But we're making progress, right? And the commission may come back in this UTP with a counter proposal that maybe doesn't fund the project completely, and that's okay. Because we still have the next round, and we can go after other funding sources, federal, state, or whatever. But it shows good progress towards the goal, which is to get the project funded in time for when the project would be ready. And Tomas, I think we're still targeting fiscal year 25, correct?
Correct. Okay, I believe Representative Gonzalez is on video.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman Miller. I think what I really want to express to the MPO today is just some thematic concerns that I've heard throughout the morning. I'm really concerned that in the previous agenda item, the public is expressing concerns of trust, concerns of priorities, concerns of misrepresentation, and I don't want those concerns to not be heard as a body. I think that we have to be really careful that the actions that we're doing as a board, our values aligned with our community. And while I think the hard part for us is we get to see so much information that sometimes isn't available at all levels to everybody, it ultimately sometimes makes us feel ultimately feeling held, well, I'll speak for myself. It makes me feel a little held hostage to understand that we have a priority for one area, but other parts of our region have expressed historical concerns of priorities and trust, and to see that we are not really addressing those with the same vigor as some of the other priorities. I've heard all morning some very real values alignment concerns, and I just want to really uplift those voices. And while I support the needs for an infrastructure investment, I cannot not say that those needs are not any different than the needs of the Mission Valley, are not any different than the needs of Far East El Paso. And I hope that the board will demonstrate the same vigor and desire of investment that this conversation is having.
Thank you, Representative. Mr. Chris?
Chair, I think that everybody at the board is in agreement as far as building the metropolitan area that El Paso would like to see. But then I have questions because I think that I don't know if 150 million, which is 20% of the identified potential funding that's needed for this project, which is 750 million, is going to make all the difference. I just want to make sure that cities like Houston and Dallas and those large metro areas, what have they done in the past? And I think TxDOT can answer this for us, because I just want to make sure. And again, I don't think that El Paso is fearful of pushing maybe smaller projects back to go after the large ones. I think the risk factor here is the actual perception of El Paso. Should we pull back and then enter into this agreement with the commission, and then at the end of the day we say, oh man, $750 million, we weren't ready for that. What is the perception that we're going to produce in doing so? I think that's my biggest fear at this table. But TxDOT, can you tell me if 20% and other projects that you guys are familiar with in other cities similar to El Paso and trying to build this, has that worked well for those cities?
I can assure you, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I can assure you that some of these larger projects in the metropolitan areas have all had local funding as part of the funding cocktail. If it's 20%, I'm not entirely sure, because I don't have some of those funding amounts. I know Representative Ortega has asked administration that very same question, and they've supported her, and they've given her some of those dollars associated with some of the projects in Austin and San Antonio and Houston, and they've been a significant amount.
They have varied in terms of the amounts that they seek from the local communities, in terms as what Mr. Trevino said, the cocktail, in terms of how much skin in the game that they want the community to put in. And a lot of it, again, is advocacy and reminding that this project is not only important to El Paso, but it's important to the rest of the state when you talk about what I-10 means and where it goes through in the state of Texas and outside of the state. So in terms of the specific percentage, we don't know. It's kind of like what Mr. Calvo said earlier. This is what we're talking to them about, telling them, yes, if this gets approved, this is what this community is willing to approve, and then take it from there. We weren't gonna give them what they wanted. There was no way that we were gonna give them what they initially asked for in the last UTP. So it's a negotiation, and let's see what occurs. Nothing is at this point set in gold. This is what we're proposing. They will let us know. They'll get back with us on it. And ultimately, it's the decision of the commission. We were blessed to have Ted Houghton as a former commissioner for many, many years, sat there from El Paso, and there was many good things that happened. But we don't have anybody on that commission from this community. And so it's right now the MPO that we are working through in order to accomplish priorities. And I should have mentioned in this letter, we were talking about I-10, but we also asked them about the Northeast Parkway. I mean, we want additional monies. We want to continue to seek funding for other priority projects. It's just a matter of what needs to be done now and what are safety concerns, what's important to this community. So it's not that we're letting up on getting monies for, say, the smaller municipalities and other projects across the city, because we don't have enough funding, and that's what we're working on, and we've been doing it for a while.
Further comments? Further comment?
Well, I just think it's really important that, if we have priority projects and we move them back, I think it loses a lot of its intent that it is a priority project. So we need to be careful when we talk about that we want and we have priority projects and we want additional funding, and then we turn around and move them back. So it's just a word of caution as we move forward to look at projects and continue to keep them as a priority. And, and I appreciate you bringing that, moving it forward and not putting it out so far out.
Okay. So if there's no further discussion, do I have a motion regarding this item?
So moved.
I have a motion to approve submitting this proposal to the Texas Transportation Commission. I have a second. Last chance for discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Opposed? Have one.
Also nay on that one.
Two oppositions, three oppositions. Mary's. You got the rest of them? Are you good?
I have Ms. Gonzalez and Sir.
Okay, just for the record. Thank you. Okay, that being said, motion carries. We should go forward.
All right.
To reports. We're through
We
with
move on to the reports and discussion. Item 15 is the fiscal year 2021 annual listing of obligated projects, and Gabby has a short presentation. Short, I promise.
Good morning, Gabriela Lopez with the El Paso MPO. This report, the annual listing of obligated projects, is done every year, and it's just to present the amount of federal funds that were obligated within the fiscal year. All the information is in our website, and in the backup, there was a small delay of the final annual listing of obligated projects due to pending information from the sponsoring entities. But if there's any questions?
question. Thank you very much. The next item.
All right. Item 16 is a New Mexico DOT Transportation Project Fund fiscal year 2023 call for projects.
Gabriela Lopez again with the El Paso MPO. So we did have a call for projects for the New Mexico Transportation Project Fund. The deadline, the first deadline was to submit the draft applications on March 18th. That already passed. We did receive a total of 4 applications from the different entities in New Mexico, and we will now be reaching out to the entities to schedule a review meeting for the draft applications. Are there any questions?
Question. Is that all? Being no questions, we can go on.
Question over here, Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a question from me.
So the applications are from municipalities or the?
Yes, so this call for projects was for the New Mexico region of the El Paso MPO planning area. So the eligible applicants would include Doña Ana County, so the city of Sunland Park, the city of Anthony. So we did receive a total of 4 applications, 1 from the city of Sunland Park, 1 from the city of Anthony, and 2 from Doña Ana County.
Okay, item 17, statewide text.MPO safety task force. Very briefly, as I have reported to you all, the El Paso MPO was invited to participate in the statewide safety task force. We had a meeting last week after the TPB, so I can report that I was there in person, and we're making progress at the state level to come up with different strategies and ideas that can be implemented at the state level, but at the same time that we can come in and incorporate here locally. Since then, I also had a conversation with the city of El Paso staff, with Sam Rodriguez and his group. They are in the process of getting a consultant on board to develop their own, what is it, Road to Zero or Vision Zero, whatever the name is, right? And we are working together, and we're talking to the Texas Transportation Institute to see how we can work together with the city of El Paso to make this effort not only regional, but make sure that if we need more funding and all that, make it more robust. So I don't have any specifics yet, but I hope that that by next month I can report a lot more details about this. And also, we talked about maybe setting up an ad hoc committee here regionally. So we're not ready to do that until we have a better understanding of what the scope could be. And then we'll bring up the ideas or suggestions to the chair and see if it's appropriate to set up a committee. That's all I have, but I'm open to questions.
Questions on the safety?
So on the safety committee, is that for our region only? Y'all's input to the overall state group, you're giving them input from our region, or is it aggregate? Is it aggregate recommendations?
Well, I think it's both ways. Well, what this statewide committee is looking for is that they bring the MPOs and the districts, some of the Texas districts, for ideas, because they're saying, hey, throughout the state, we're having our, accident rates are going up, fatalities are going up, serious incidents and so on.
Okay, so things that are micro and macro are going to be included.
Absolutely.
Like Mesa and other streets that we have that are really embedded inside our community and they cause a lot of accidents. So all of those kinds of ideas will be discussed.
Absolutely, and we're talking not just on the highway system, but it's also local roads. I mean, obviously, it's everything.
So you'll have a way to communicate with the board so that we can give you input?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the other advantage of doing it at the state level is that we see what other regions are doing, right? So if something works in other regions, why not do it here? We don't have practices. We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Thank you.
And to that statement, there's already a lot of committees active, like City of El Paso, the county, various functions. That's what we found out. And so we don't want to just duplicate what everybody else is doing, but maybe aggregate them into a different thing. So we're looking at what the best is.
All right, then moving to item 18, RMS 2020 project status report. Again, this is a monthly report of all the projects that are part of the RMS 2020, reporting that they're moving well with their obvious challenges in project development, but nothing special to report on that. All the information is in your backup.
Question.
Okay, then finally, Executive Director report, and I promise I'll make this short. Wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of this notice of funding opportunity that came out from the U.S. Department of Transportation for 3 projects, the infra, which is an old well, I shouldn't say old, but it's a program that already exists, but 2 new ones that are being funded as part of the IIJA, the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed last year, the mega and the rural. Mega is focusing on big projects, big corridor projects, and obviously our I-10 project would be eligible for that, and others as well. The rural, we may not qualify because our urbanized area here in the El Paso region, we're urbanized, so obviously not rural. But you know, I encourage everybody to look at the notice. And you know, the MPO is available to help all the communities to look at, try to understand what the requirements are and the eligibility, and see and coordinate an effort at the regional level to make sure that we're not necessarily competing against each other, but be very strategic in what projects and what opportunities, you know, we can collectively take advantage of.
And to that end, and how we can be supportive is TxDOT's region is not just El Paso. They have a lot of rural roads. And if we could assist with that, then that frees up more money for others. So it's really important to portions of that. And from what I understand, it's a huge amount of money.
There's a couple.
Yeah, I mean, the pot is big, but at the same time, it's a national program. So, you know, we are competing against the rest of the country. So the competition is fierce. Next, I want to mention the Border Trade Advisory Committee. The first meeting of 2022 was held last month, and Commissioner Ondine attended, and I see Rafael Andrete from PTI is also a member, along with David Coronado from the city and John Varela from the Borderplex Alliance and myself. It was the first meeting that we had with the new Secretary of State, who chairs the BTAC committee, and I think El Paso had a really good showing, and we need to continue doing that because, again, as Rep. Ortega has mentioned, and you've heard me say many times, you know, we need to show up, we need to participate in all of these statewide committees, and not just be there sitting down warming a chair, but really engage and participate. The other one that I wanted to mention is the I-10 corridor study that also kicked off last month. This is a study that TxDOT is organizing, and it's looking at all of I-10 within the state of Texas, from the New Mexico state line all the way to Louisiana. And again, it's a very important corridor study for us. In similar studies have been done for other parts of the state that have really highlighted the needs for other regions, you know, the Permian Basin, right? Thanks to that study, projects were identified and they're getting funding. Ports to Plains, that's another study that has, you know, political, you know, traction. So they developed the study, identified projects, and some of these are getting funded. So this is our turn. You know, we talk about I-10, right? And how important I-10 is for you know, for the country, for the state of Texas, and obviously for us. So I encourage you all to participate in these as we start developing committees here, stakeholders and other public involvement committees. You know, I encourage everybody to participate and show up, and, you know, make sure that the TxDOT administration understands how important I-10 is for all of us. And finally, I think it was mentioned earlier, the Binational Infrastructure Task Force that had a meeting today at the same, unfortunately, it was at the same time. This is a committee that is co-chaired by Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, Governor Luján Grisham of the state of New Mexico, and Governor Mario Campos of the state of Chihuahua. There's been a lot of really good communication with Ambassador Ken Salazar, Ambassador of the U.S. to Mexico. And so, you know, this meeting that happened this morning, Salvador Gonzalez attended representing the MPO, so I'm not really sure what's going on, but I think that the whole idea is, again, to talk about the importance of this border region, you know, with Texas, New Mexico, and Chihuahua, We all know it, but it's important that we communicate, that. And so whatever it comes out of this committee will certainly benefit our own processes here. So just wanted to mention that for awareness. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Coggle?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, but one of the comments that he made about Ports and Plains, that was started in Lubbock, Texas, and I was one assigned to it. And Randy Nagelbauer was the first chairman, I was the first president for that. And he makes a very good point, one of which we've talked about here, I've talked to you, talked to Representative Ortega, some other folks, the chamber and others. I wanted the MPO to hear it, that it would be a very good idea for us to set up a coalition of I-10 to be able to be represented not only at the state, but also at the federal level. The Ports and Plains Coalition, first of all, was just supposed to be a study, feasibility study of the I-27 expansion corridor. That's all it was supposed to be. But what it ended up doing is we got a U.S. corridor designation in 1998, and that designation allowed you to be able to get additional funding. We were also able to get $250 million from the Texas trunk system, which that's what they called it in '98. You were able to go from 2-lane to 4-lane highway divided. So you weren't an interstate, but you could quack like a duck. So it is a very good way, as you pointed out, to form a coalition. And once we finished setting up the coalition, it was just supposed to be from Lubbock to Amarillo, but we went all the way up to Canada and all the way down to Mexico, Del Rio, Laredo, Ciudad de Acuña on the other side, and I forget what the other city was on the other side of it, but all of those were included. So it was 50 organizations, almost $600,000 in dues. That helped pay for the consultant in DC, helped pay for an executive director or a president position, which I held during those 3 or 4 years that I did it first. And then I turned it over to someone else to go back to the city because I was a lone executive. I'm saying all that because we need that kind of attention, to your point about like on the border, not just on the border, but all of I-10, so that our biggest problem is the MPO, the almost 8 years that I've served on it. So we all have all these concerns, and all the concerns stem from one big problem. It's the lack of funding, lack of attention, the fact that we're isolated, and we need to change that. And the only way we can change that is to have a bigger presence, like you pointed out. So I know we're pressed for time, but I thought that was important for the entire board to hear, because we've been talking about it in these other meetings, but we need to get busy setting that coalition up.
Any further comment?
All I have.
Hey, being no further items on the agenda, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Is there a second? Adjourn.